We often learn American history by looking for a single savior. We compress complex, systemic changes into a simple story of one hero solving a massive problem from the top down. For generations, that story has centered on Abraham Lincoln. The popular narrative suggests he freed the enslaved entirely through sweeping presidential action and solitary moral leadership. But the historical record from early 1861 reveals a different baseline. In his first inaugural address, Lincoln stated explicitly that he had no intention and no constitutional authority to interfere with slavery where it already existed. The Union's official objective at the start of the war was strictly to preserve the map. If the government's explicit goal was not to end slavery, liberation had to be forced by someone else. Historian W.E.B. Du Bois dismantled the traditional narrative in his 1935 work, Black Reconstruction in America. He documented a reality that political histories had ignored. Enslaved African Americans were active agents in their own liberation. They did not wait for freedom to arrive. They drove the actions that destroyed the institution of slavery. Emancipation arrived as a hard-fought revolution on the ground. A desk signature simply documented the aftermath. To understand modern civil rights, we must analyze the specific, coordinated mechanics everyday people used to manufacture their own freedom. In 1861, the entire Southern economic engine relied completely on forced labor to function. When enslaved people began fleeing plantations, it functioned as an organized labor action. Du Bois categorized this mass exodus as a general strike. Hundreds of thousands of people moved across military lines into Union territory, actively withholding their labor and refusing forced return. Removing that human labor variable starved the Confederacy of its foundation and collapsed the system under the weight of mass resistance. By crashing the enemy's economy, these individuals proved that withholding participation is a highly effective lever of power. Economic withdrawal quickly evolved into active, strategic offensive operations. Harriet Tubman expanded her operations on the Underground Railroad, serving as a Union scout, a spy network coordinator, and an elite military strategist. She coordinated intelligence for operations like the Combahee River Raid, utilizing black-led intelligence to systematically destroy Confederate infrastructure and liberate over 700 people at once. By the end of the conflict, up to 200,000 black men had enlisted in the Union Army. Tens of thousands more served in the Union Navy, fighting in a unified military front across branches. These forces turned a conflict over territory into a war to eradicate slavery. They demonstrated that citizenship is secured through active, strategic defense. Following the war, the United States government had to formally recognize the legal reality that had already been enacted on the battlefield and the plantations. In 1865, the 13th Amendment officially abolished slavery and involuntary servitude. 3 years later, the 14th Amendment established citizenship and equal protection under the law. By 1870, the 15th Amendment prohibited racial discrimination in voting rights. However, starting in 1873 with the slaughterhouse cases, the Supreme Court began severely narrowing the scope of those federal protections. This legal retreat paved the way for a counter-Reconstruction era, characterized by rapid disenfranchisement, segregation laws, and the systemic economic exclusion of Jim Crow. Written laws do not enforce themselves. Progress triggers systemic backlash, creating a continuous cycle that requires constant, organized defense. Today, the legal framework of chattel slavery is gone, but the structural battle over who holds power and who has access to citizenship remains highly active. The front line shifted from physical enslavement to administrative barriers, strict election laws, and highly contested redistricting maps. This flowchart tracks how the explicit voter suppression tactics of the 19th century morphed directly into modern, complex legal barriers regulating ballot access and representation. Because the same systemic questions regarding power are still fiercely contested, Black Reconstruction never actually ended. Waiting for modern political saviors to resolve these barriers is exactly as ineffective as believing the Lincoln myth of 1861. Power responds to action. Sustaining civil rights requires the exact mechanics used by the enslaved: massive collective organization, economic independence, and relentless participation. History is a mechanical blueprint. We study the past to locate the specific levers of power so we know exactly how to pull them today. Freedom is a permanent, unfinished project. We do not wait for change to arrive. We organize to produce it.